Bloomberg Tech Asia is live with Shery in Tokyo and Annabelle Droulers in Hong Kong.
Welcome to the show. In today's episode, we're focusing on one of the hottest sectors today, humanoids. And of course, we have seen them everywhere, Annabelle, this year, from running marathons to playing football. And it's really the ambition of China, isn't it, when it comes to embodied AI? We've seen them in so many events, even at the World Economic Forum, where I was there in China this year. I spoke to the CEO of Deep Robotics. And of course, we have others like Unitree as well, with their jumping and side-flipping robots.
Yeah, and I think you can't forget boxing as well. That's one of the main things we've seen in China this year, robots doing. But I think if you can't look past anything in the robotic space in China, it's just the sheer scale of it. I mean, where else in the world can you walk into an event like when I went to the World AI conference in Shanghai this year? You can see me there in the boxing ring and have literally an entire hall dedicated to humanoids. I mean, China just has it completely sewn up on the hardware side. They can manufacture at scale. They've got the components. They've got the know-how, and they've also managed to pull ahead of their peers, like Japan and, of course, Korea.
It's been really surprising to see that exuberance over humanoids in China, right? Because you mentioned Japan, and it was a pioneer back in the 1960s, also in the 1990s and 2000s with their humanoid robots. But at the same time, Japan really focused on the industrial applications. So where did the AI capabilities go? That was the key question for Japan, of course. But it's still an aging society where robotics are needed.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that big question as well. When do we get into households? But we're going to get into all the details in this episode. But just take a listen to how China's built up that dominance.
It's very likely that human robots are going to be robots that we can deploy into the world relatively easily.
From labs in Shenzhen to workshops in Silicon Valley, humanoids are stepping out of science fiction and into our reality. The race is on to dominate the next era in robotics, with companies in Asia and the US vying to take the lead. China is seen as a frontrunner, with Morgan Stanley saying the country will have the highest number of humanoids in use worldwide by 2050.
It's the result of many years of government support, advancements in AI, and a strong manufacturing base that gives it more than a helping hand.
The market is poised for explosive growth, with the International Federation of Robotics noting two primary reasons for its rise: a chronic lack of workers combined with ageing labour forces in developed nations. Yet sales channels are fairly limited so far, with universities and research institutions currently some of the biggest buyers.
This might seem like just a gimmick, but the humanoid companies in China, like Unitree, are blending tech and entertainment as seen as a serious path toward commercialisation.
Ultimately, the goal is to bring humanoids into households, with varying estimates for how long that might take.
I think maybe 3 or 5 years, the home robots can do the common things in my home.
We are still a bit far from that, because as you can see right now, like the robots cannot perform as in the movies that we are used to see.
It may be decades before humanoids are a common sight in our homes. On the factory floor, though, it's already becoming a reality. Bloomberg Intelligence says improving battery life and efficiency gains in humanoid robots could make them virtually as cost-effective as human workers by 2035. That sort of potential is creating intense competition, particularly in China, where concerns are already growing about overcapacity.
We have a humanoid robot frenzy here. Everybody try to break into the space. I think probably a lot of these companies are not going to exist in the 5 years down the road.
The question is whether this level of interest in humanoids is unhealthy or the right way for the industry to develop.
Well, the humanoid robot frenzy in China may still need to peak before we see any sort of consolidation in the sector. I actually spoke with one of the rising stars in the space, Droidup. The CEO, Qingdu Li, told us why it's so easy to get into the robotics space right now, but only a handful of companies will survive the next 5 years. Here's what he told me about the negatives and the positives of intense competition.
We can hire people knowing about robots. There's so many engineering in China. You know, in every year, more than 10 million of college students graduate college. So there's a lot of engineers we can use. The second is that There's many company in the supply chain. For us, it is very easier to build up a robot. Also, China is a big country, and we have a lot of applications. The government are very open-minded. They can support us, encourage us to use the robot in different scenarios. The bet for us is that more than 100 companies work on humanoid robot. I think finally we are less than I think 20, maybe people can finally survive when the big market coming. So the competition is very high. How to survive the next 5 years is our key problem, I think. So you have to find a scenario the humanoid robot can use in that scenario and can really help our customer to solve their real problems.
In the next 5 years, you see then quite big industry consolidation, maybe from more than 100 companies to 20 companies. Is that the scenario that you see happening?
Yeah, I can see that.
What's different about Droidup's robots?
It's more like a human. Generally, we can see that for any other robot, there's each joint they put a motor. But in Droidup, our robot using tandem-driven. That means we use 3 motors together to drive 3 joints. The peak power of each motor is lower. So in this way, the robot is much lighter than the other kind of robot.
What's the advantage then? If you've got a robot that's lighter, for someone who's looking at buying a robot, why would they want that, do you think?
In the movement of a robot, they cut energy. The energy, if you strike the people, maybe hurt the people. So if the robot is very light, it means there's not too much energy in the movement, so it will be safer. It's still a big problem. I think if we cannot save the safety problem, the robot will no way to get in the home. For our company, our robot is very light, so it will be easier to use in the home situation. The weight of our robot is about only 60% of another robot in the same size. So the robot is much safer.
One of your robots has just been accepted into a PhD program in China.
Yeah.
Explain the thinking behind that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting problem. The first application scenario for human and robot is performance. So, the AI is growing very fast each year. The speed is much faster and faster. So we think in the next 4 years, the AI is good enough to support a PhD for robot. So we think maybe we can build a robot, learn how to performance. It can learn in labs, or also can in classes.
You mentioned about price or cost. Unitree, for instance, just cut the price on one of its models to $6,000 US. How do you fare against that, and what sort of pressure as well do you feel as a business to lower your prices?
Yeah, Unitrees they make the robot a very low price. I think they still have money to earn. They still have a profit. That's because the advantage of a supply chain of China. Maybe in other countries, it's not easier to get this. For our situation, we can maybe lower than Unitree because our robot needs less material than Unitree. But I think it's not a good way for us just compete with the price. If the company do not have a profit, the humanoid robot problem will not solved. Low price is not a good way for the health competition for the whole world.
That was the Droidup founder and CEO Qingdu Li there, and we'll have plenty more ahead on Bloomberg Tech Asia. This is Bloomberg. Well, China's been leading the world in humanoid robotics with players like Unitree, Tech, fast gaining global recognition. Let's get more on the outlook now for the industry with Wei Sun. She's Principal Analyst for AI at Counterpoint Research. And Wei, talk to us about how you see China competing versus the rest of the world. Where are the strengths of China, and where does it also maybe need to catch up a little bit to the US, for instance?
Sure. So China is leading in a couple of sectors. First of all, the low cost, benefiting from the highly evolving and the manufacturing advantages at scale, and also the design for the hardware, the agility of it, and also how robust it can be right now. So that's how China is leading right now. But I think US is leading in terms of the AI models of end-to-end neural networks that kind of make the humanoid robot eventually being, autonomy, like a full autonomy in the future. So I think they're quite competing in those two areas, the hardware versus the model side.
Yeah, it's really, you can see that strength in China's hardware in particular. The software side may be a little bit of a ways to catch up. And it's really important as well, to your point, around getting humanoids into more complex situations like households, for instance. When do you see that happening in China? And what's that gap as well, if you can put it maybe down to years, between the US and China on software, on that AI side?
I think in a realistic point of view, China will start to have this robot for homes, for households, within 3 to 5 years. If you're a little bit more optimistic, it's down to within a couple of years. So that's quite exciting to look forward to. Yeah.
What we've learned from the tech rivalry between China and the U.S. is how important supply chains are, right? When it comes to China, for example, actually owning about 90% capacity of the components that go into humanoids, how critical is this for the future development of this sector?
Oh, I think it's extremely crucial in terms of the future development, because as the humanoid robots going to be developed in the learning curve, and then all the components, especially how the optimization between the hardware and the software, will be extremely difficult and increasingly important for the performance. So China have owning the most of the supply chains, and having this, ecosystem can hugely, first of all, it can hugely reduce the cost for the overall robot, and secondly, it can further optimize the hardware, software integration for the robots. So I think it's very important.
We briefly mentioned how Japan was faring in this sector, especially after it pioneered humanoid development back in the 1990s. How do other countries other than China and the U.S. sit in this race?
Yeah, I think, in the past, Japan was having this great idea and creativity for developing the humanoid robots, but it fails in the scale and also in the cost. And I think right now, and especially with the ChatGPT, the generative AI being a catalyst for the humanoid robot, the whole landscape is turning very differently. And Asia, especially China and also Korea, have this potential to kind of playing a very important role in the future development for the humanoid robot.
When it comes to artificial intelligence and really taking this to the next stage, we mentioned how, of course, the U.S. and China were dominating. Are there any other countries that also could be a big player?
Yeah, I think Korea might be one. And also, there are a lot of research and R&D in Europe that can be leveraged into, contributing to the global robotic development. So I think at this stage, it's still very early. It's the infancy stage of the humanoid robots. As we see, only 2 years ago or more than 2 years ago, ChatGPT, emerges. So it's really hard to see. Anyone in the world can have this, capability or potential to emerge as an important part of the players. So I'm very open-minded to that landscape evolving.
Yeah, and I guess that way that the race of who really wins this is far from settled just yet. But also at the same time, what's exceptional in China is just the sheer amount of competition. Given that we're still a few years off some of those more mainstream applications, do we face any need for consolidation right now in the industry?
I think so. I think, for humanoid robots, it's very important to think about how beneficial it can be and how the potential risk it can cause, especially when it's implemented in household settings rather than industrial settings. So a lot of discussions and the policy formations will be happening in the next couple of years for consolidation on the landscape, like certain rules, certain features and functionalities that can be permitted and not permitted in certain settings. So a lot of things will evolve in the policy set of things. Yeah.
Wei-san, really good to have you with us, Principal Analyst for AI
Pleasure.
at Counterpoint Research. Coming up next, we turn our attention to Japan and hear from the so-called father of humanoid robots, Professor Hiroshi Ishiguro. This is Bloomberg Tech Asia. Remember this robot. At the start of the millennium, Japan was at the forefront of humanoid development. So why does it seem like all the latest news in this space is coming out of China while Korea tops the world in using them? Is Japan falling behind, or is it just heading in a different direction? Take a look at how the tech race across Asia is shaping up.
It was 1999. As people were going crazy over the Y2K bug, Honda unveiled a piece of tech that gave the world a glimpse of what the new millennium could look like. As the birthplace of Gundam, Voltes 5, and Astro Boy, Japan's humanoid robots have stood as symbols of a tech-driven future. A quarter of a century since Asimo, robots have become pervasive in modern Japanese society, driven by need. Faced with a severe labor shortage and one of the world's fastest aging populations, businesses are investing in robots that can work alongside people instead of replacing them. But while the country has remained a major player in robotics over the decades, momentum has shifted. South Korea is now leading the world in embracing robot workers. Its factories have over 1,000 robots per 10,000 employees, a density more than 6 times the global average. Korea has also gained ground in humanoid development with companies like Naver Labs, Robras, and Rainbow Robotics. China's prowess in the field has also generated a lot of hype for investors, even as real-world applications remain vague. The Morgan Stanley Global Humanoid Model sees the market surpassing $5 trillion by 2050, with more than 1 billion humanoid robots in use. This year, humanoids in China ran a half marathon, competed in a kickboxing tournament, and played football. And even if those events weren't exactly technological triumphs, they showed how Beijing has put humanoids at the center of its national strategy, with billions being poured into creations that show off power, dexterity, and speed.
I'm an android designed to resemble a real person.
Hiroshi Ishiguro, often called the father of humanoids, has dedicated his life to making the most realistic and human-like robots, in the belief that the lines dividing these machines and humans will someday completely disappear.
We want to use a humanoid robot in daily situations. But for other countries, in the United States and European countries, probably they want to use the robot in the factories. So in Japan, we want to use in both the factories and daily life. I was in China. I have seen so many humanoid robots there. But the problem is the applications. But I guess within 5, at least 10 years, I think we're going to develop the killer application for the humanoid robots, and people will start to use the humanoid robots in a daily life, in the factories.
When comparing Japan's progress in robot adoption, Ishiguro says the main issue is practicality, something he sees recent leaps in AI resolving.
I think the Japanese people are quickly adapting to the humanoid robots. So that is the Japanese cultures. We never distinguish human and robots. I think we are doing it differently. Actually, 25 years ago, in Japan, humanoid robot development was very active, right? But we couldn't find the real applications. But once we could find the real applications, of course, we want to start to use the humanoid robot in a daily life, right? So. The another bottleneck is AI, right? So in order to develop a better AI, the AI is a very, very fundamental technology for the robots, therefore making it more human-like. But of course, the people worry about the autonomy of AI. But I believe, we are not so stupid.
At the Osaka World Expo, Ishiguro's vision is on display, showcasing a futuristic Japanese society in 50 years where humans and robots coexist.
We can deeply study about the human itself. It's better to give the human-like appearance to the robot so people can naturally talk with the robot, right? So you can have a chat with my robot, right? So, and probably, you can have some feeling to talk with me. And another the merit is we can deeply study about the humanity itself. So the human is animal that have two ways of the evolutions. One is the genes, the other is the technologies. That is the difference from the other animals. So technology is a way of the human evolutions. So by developing the technologies, we can have evolutions, right? So by accepting a robot technology, AI technologies, we can be more advanced humans. And by accepting AI and robots, we can be more better humans.
Annabelle, I've even heard that Japanese people are more open to having these robots in daily life because they grew up with animation about robots, with toys as well. But of course, we know that today, at least, China is leading the way on embodied AI and also with humanoid components.
Yeah, and also from that investor side as well. I mean, this is really emerging as a key theme in the Chinese market. If you actually take a look at this terminal chart, for instance, you can see this basket of humanoid stocks versus the CSI 300, the line in blue below. But it is that big outperformance, a bit of a lull. It started to climb once again. Hard to say exactly who is going to be emerging as the winner, but this is a major, major market here. The global humanoids market expected to exceed $5 trillion by 2050, but we'll continue to track it. That's it for this episode of Bloomberg Tech Asia. Stay tuned for more next month.